Thanksgiving, Long Time Ago. Stories and Art by Sandra Fuhriman Gray. Edited and directed by Erin Gray. Dearest, much-loved Phaedra Rose, today is Thanksgiving, and Grandpa and I miss having all of you here. You asked me to tell you about when I was little, so I will. I asked Grandpa to tell me, and all he said was that he must have spent Thanksgiving with his Grandma and Grandpa Barbie in Illinois. The night before Thanksgiving, we would each have a bath and our hair washed. Our bathroom door was never shut, and I remember my mother and father as well as my sister wandering in and out when I would have a bath. When I was in the bathtub, I would get to have a glass of orange juice because my mother thought I would spill it if I was allowed to have it at the table. My hair would be washed at the kitchen sink with me lying up on the counter and my father holding my head while my mother would wash my hair. It seemed very uncomfortable. My hair was long like yours, and after it was washed, I would sit on the stool in the bathroom, and my mother would comb and set my hair in rollers. It hurt, and sometimes I cried. My sister told me I had red and blue rats in my hair. I never saw them run away. On Thanksgiving morning, after we were dressed, we would all sit at the table in the living room, and my mother would cook and serve either pancakes or waffles, usually with chopped pecans and log cabin syrup. We would all get into the car later and drive to the Lake Lowell service station. It was a gas station that was about halfway to my grandparents' home. We always stopped. My father would put gas into the car, and usually we would all buy a small bottle of pop. Carol and I would usually have orange pop. The service station was fun to stop at because the outside was covered with rocks that were pretty. We would then drive past part of Lake Lowell, which is a large water reservoir. At Thanksgiving time, the leaves were all orange and brown, and we could see the lake. Sometimes there would be boats with fishermen. It was such a pretty ride, and we would sing, "Over the river and through the woods." I thought the song had been made just for us, as we did go by water and trees. When we would get there, we would run into the house to see who was there. The house would smell so good. My grandmother would be at the stove cooking mashed potatoes and gravy. The turkey would be in the oven. One time my father shot a goose, and she cooked that for Thanksgiving. The adults would sit around the big table in the kitchen, and all of us children would sit at a small table, also in the kitchen or in the living room. The entire house would be full of people. Grandma and Grandpa, Mama and Daddy, Carol, aunts and uncles, cousins, big and small. We would eat and listen to the grown-ups talk and argue. Grandfather would tell long, wild, interesting stories about World War I or about logging. My father might play practical jokes. One year he put yards and yards of string in his mouth and pretended it was a string that tied the turkey legs together. It made everyone laugh. And so we ate and talked and listened until we were stuffed on turkey, dressing, sweet potatoes, mashed potatoes, gravy, bread, fruit salad, and later pumpkin pie. After dinner, we kids would run outside, regardless of the weather, dressed in our winter coats. Carol and Mary Helen were the two oldest grandchildren, so they would lead the wild kid pack. Through the wheat fields, we would play follow the leader. Through the farm buildings, we would play hide and seek. Sometimes we would gather eggs for grandmother, sending the chickens scattering and squawking and flying. Sometimes we would have Aunt Virginia play with us, and sometimes grandmother would play Monopoly with us. Sometimes my mother would insist that I was tired and have me lay down with her on a bed. Of course, I was sure I was never tired. When it was too dark to play outdoors anymore, we would come to have a sandwich of leftover turkeys and another piece of pumpkin pie. Then we would all crowd into the living room to listen to the discussions, arguments of the adults. My grandmother loved nothing better than to have a heated discussion about anything controversial. Sometimes religion, sometimes people, anything. Sometimes we would go into the kitchen and draw and write on the frosty large kitchen window. Our fingers would get cold, but we would trace such beautiful patterns. Then it was late. My Aunt Wilma, Uncle Dave, and Mary, Helen, and Earl would have to leave to drive back to Pocatello. We would leave because it was late. Sometimes it was snowing. I would watch the large wet flakes of snow hitting the windshield and being moved over and scrunched by the slapping windshield wipers. Most of my Thanksgiving memories are happy, full of sounds and laughter and talking, smells of turkey and pie, and sights of dark winter clouds and many people. Love from Grandma.